When Marcus changes his own Wi-Fi password, his nosy neighbor Karen storms over, accusing him of tampering with the network. The confrontation spirals into accusations, police involvement, and a bizarre discovery. By the end of that day, Marcus learns a shocking truth hidden in plain sight, one that changes everything. Marcus Ellison had always been the kind of man who kept to himself. His small, two-story brick townhouse in the quiet suburbs of Brookhaven wasn't just a home. It was his sanctuary. The manicured lawn, the potted plants by the front steps, and the freshly painted shutters all told the story of someone who valued order and peace. His days were simple. He worked remotely as a cybersecurity consultant, spent his evenings cooking new recipes, and sometimes sat out on the back deck with a book while the cicadas hummed in the background. He liked it that way, but peace has a way of drawing unwanted attention, especially from people who can't leave well enough alone. For Marcus, that person was Karen Whitmore, the next-door neighbor whose presence was like the persistent hum of a faulty refrigerator, impossible to ignore, even when you tried. Karen was in her early 50s, always wearing pastel cardigans and holding an oversized mug of coffee like it was a personality trait. She had a knack for turning small talk into interrogations, and for assuming every action in her vicinity was somehow her business. It started with the occasional wave across the yard, then little comments about Marcus's recycling habits, or how his hedges were just a tad over the property line. But lately, she'd been fixated on something stranger, his Wi-Fi network. Marcus had noticed it the way you notice a hairline crack in a wall. It doesn't seem like much at first, but it keeps catching your eye. Karen would drop comments like, "Oh, I saw your Wi-Fi name change the other day. Funny choice." Or, "Are you using a guest network now?" It was creepy enough that she seemed to be checking what networks were visible in the area, but Marcus brushed it off. Until Tuesday morning. The day had started as usual. Marcus woke up early, brewed his coffee, and sat down at his desk to work on a client's firewall assessment. His internet connection had been spotty the night before, and he decided it was a good time to change his Wi-Fi password. It was something he did regularly anyway, part of his cybersecurity routine. He logged into the router, updated the password to a more complex string, and renamed the network to something new: Ellison Secure 5G. Simple. Efficient. Done. Not 10 minutes later, there was a sharp knock at his front door. Marcus sighed. He already knew who it was. When he opened the door, Karen stood there in a pink cardigan and pressed khaki pants, her face twisted in an expression of tight-lipped disapproval. "Morning," Marcus said cautiously. She didn't return the greeting. "Marcus, did you change your Wi-Fi password?" He blinked, caught off guard by the bluntness. Yes. Why?" Karen crossed her arms. "Because I've been trying to get online all morning, and suddenly my internet stopped working. I think you've locked me out." Marcus stared at her. "Locked you out? Karen, I don't provide your internet. You have your own service." Her voice rose a little. "I did have my own service, but ever since I moved in here, my devices have been automatically connecting to your network. Now suddenly, I can't get in, and I find that suspicious." Marcus took a slow breath, his patience already thinning. "Karen, if your devices were connecting to my network, that means you, or someone in your house, was using my Wi-Fi without permission. That's not okay." Karen's eyes narrowed. "Don't make it sound like I'm stealing. I thought it was a community network or something. Everyone shares around here." Marcus let out a humorless laugh. "This isn't an apartment building, and this is my private network. No one shares it." Instead of looking embarrassed, Karen doubled down. "Well, maybe you should have made it clear. You can't just change things without telling people who rely on it." That was the moment Marcus realized this wasn't just about Wi-Fi, it was about control. Karen had decided that whatever she could access, she had a right to. And now that access was gone, she was treating it like a personal betrayal. "Karen," Marcus said, trying to keep his voice calm, "I'm not responsible for your internet. You need to contact your service provider." She tilted her head, her lips pressed into a thin smile. "You know, it's awfully suspicious for someone to suddenly change their password like that. Makes me wonder what you're hiding." Marcus was too stunned to reply for a second. "What I'm hiding? It's a password, Karen. That's the point. Privacy. Her smile didn't fade. I think I might need to let the HOA know about this. Marcus almost laughed again, but this time out of disbelief. Please do. I'm sure they'll be very interested to hear you've been freeloading off my network. That should have been the end of it. But Marcus had lived next to Karen long enough to know that with people like her, things rarely ended cleanly. By the time the sun set that evening, Marcus's doorbell rang again. This time it wasn't Karen. It was two police officers. Marcus opened the door slowly, feeling that creeping unease you get when you know a situation is about to get worse before it gets better. Two uniformed officers stood on the porch, both with neutral but guarded expressions. The older of the two, a tall man with close-cropped gray hair, spoke first. Mr. Ellison? Yes, Marcus replied, keeping his voice even. We had a call from your neighbor, the officer continued, glancing at his notepad. She claims there's been suspicious activity with your internet connection. Marcus raised his eyebrows. Suspicious activity? You're here because I changed my Wi-Fi password? The younger officer shifted uncomfortably. She said you were intentionally blocking her from accessing the internet, which she claims is harassment. Marcus almost laughed, but stopped himself. Let me get this straight. She's been using my Wi-Fi without permission, and now that I've secured it, she's calling the police on me? The older officer exhaled slowly, clearly aware of how absurd it sounded. Look, sir, I'm not saying there's any crime here, but we need to follow up when a call is made. Marcus folded his arms. Fine. Follow up. Here's my router. Here's my account and my name. Would you like to see my internet bill too? Karen's voice suddenly cut through from the side yard. She had been standing just out of sight, and now she appeared, arms crossed, a smug look plastered on her face. See? He's being defensive. Why else would he hide the fact that I can't connect anymore? Marcus turned toward her. Because it's not your network, and while we're at it, stop standing in my yard. Karen ignored him and looked at the officers. I think he's doing something shady. People don't just randomly change their passwords unless they're trying to cover up illegal activity. Maybe he's... Karen, enough, Marcus snapped. His voice was sharper now, cutting through her rambling. The younger officer held up his hands. All right, let's keep this civil. Ma'am, you don't have a legal right to your neighbor's private internet connection. If your devices were connecting to his network, it was without his consent. That's not something he's obligated to provide. Karen's mouth opened, but no words came out. The smugness faltered for a split second, then returned. Fine. But if you're not going to do anything, I'll take it up with the HOA and the internet company. Maybe they'll be more interested in his... activities. The officers exchanged a glance, clearly done with the conversation. After a brief, polite goodbye, they left Marcus standing on his porch with Karen glaring at him before finally storming back to her house. Marcus closed the door and locked it, shaking his head. This was ridiculous, even for Karen. But as he sat back down at his desk, a thought nagged at him. How exactly had she been connecting to his network in the first place? He prided himself on good security, unique passwords, WPA3 encryption, and monitoring for unusual connections. The only way she could have been using his Wi-Fi was if she had gotten the password somehow, and that wasn't something you could guess easily. Marcus pulled up his router's logs and started scrolling. His eyes narrowed. There it was, an unfamiliar device name that had been connected for months. Not a phone, not a laptop, but something that looked like a small, low-power device. The connection went back further than he expected, almost a year. And it wasn't just one, there were 3 of them. That didn't make sense. Karen couldn't have set up something like that without getting inside his house. Unless... Marcus grabbed a flashlight and went down to the basement. He scanned along the walls near the cable line, checking every outlet and junction box. That's when he saw it. Tucked just above the basement window frame, behind a piece of insulation, was a tiny device no bigger than a deck of cards. He pulled it down, turning it over in his hand. It had a SIM card slot, a small antenna, and a faint blinking light. It wasn't just a Wi-Fi repeater, it was a signal sniffer, capable of logging traffic. His stomach tightened. This wasn't about free internet. Someone had been monitoring him. He found the other 2 devices within the hour. One hidden behind his TV stand, another inside an unused power outlet cover in the upstairs hallway. Each one was transmitting data somewhere. Marcus's hands shook as he gathered them on his kitchen counter. Karen had been playing the role of nosy neighbor, but this went way beyond casual spying. He called his friend Eric, a fellow cybersecurity expert. Within minutes of describing the devices, Eric whistled over the phone. "Man, those aren't consumer gadgets. That's corporate or government-grade surveillance hardware. Whoever put those there wasn't just trying to piggyback your Wi-Fi. They were watching everything you do online." Marcus felt cold. "But why me?" Eric hesitated. "Could be a mistake. Or maybe you're connected to something they want. But listen, those things aren't cheap, and they're not legal for just anyone to use. If Karen had them, she's either working for someone or someone's using her." Marcus looked out the window toward Karen's house. Her blinds were drawn, but he swore he saw a shadow move. For the first time since he'd met her, Marcus realized Karen wasn't just a meddlesome neighbor, she was the front-facing mask of something much bigger. And that meant changing his Wi-Fi password had just blown his cover. Marcus didn't sleep that night. He sat in his living room with the lights off, the 3 surveillance devices spread out on his coffee table like evidence in a crime drama. Every blink of their tiny LEDs felt like a reminder that someone, somewhere, was already aware he had found them. He kept replaying the conversation with Eric in his head. Government-grade surveillance hardware, illegal for civilians, not the kind of tech you pick up at a big box store. Whoever had planted these wasn't just curious about his Netflix habits. They wanted information, and they'd been patient enough to collect it for months. By morning, Marcus had decided on one thing. Before he went to the police or the FBI, he was going to confront Karen directly. Not because he thought she'd confess, he doubted she was the mastermind, but because he needed to see how she'd react when she knew the game was up. At 8 a.m. sharp, he walked next door. Karen answered the door in a floral robe, clutching her coffee mug like usual. Her hair was still in rollers. She frowned immediately. "What do you want?" Marcus held up one of the devices. "Recognize this?" She glanced at it briefly, then forced a chuckle. "Some kind of tech thing? You're the computer guy, not me." "This," Marcus said evenly, "was hidden in my house. It's been connected to my network for almost a year. I found 3 of them, and unless my dog planted them, someone put them there on purpose." Karen's smile faltered. Her eyes darted, not at him, but over his shoulder toward the street. "I have no idea what you're talking about," she said, but her voice had lost its syrupy confidence. Marcus stepped closer. "I think you do. And I think you've been using my Wi-Fi as more than just free internet. Who are you working for?" Her jaw tightened. "You should leave now." "Or what? You'll call the cops again? Go ahead. I'll show them the devices, the router logs, the whole thing." That got her attention. She set down her mug with a trembling hand. "Marcus, you don't understand what you're getting into. Just forget you found them. Put them back." The absurdity of the suggestion almost made him laugh. "Put them back? So they can keep spying on me?" Karen leaned in slightly, lowering her voice. "It's not just you they're watching. And if you start digging, you'll bring them down on both of us. They don't like people who mess with their operations." Marcus studied her face. She wasn't bluffing. He could see the fear behind her eyes. "Who are they?" he asked. But before she could answer, a black SUV turned the corner and rolled slowly down the street. Karen's eyes flicked toward it, then back to Marcus. "You need to leave now." The SUV didn't stop at her house or his. It just passed by, but Marcus noticed the tinted windows and the subtle antenna mounted on the back. It wasn't the kind of vehicle you bought for school runs. He walked back to his house with more questions than answers. "Oh!" Inside, Marcus called Eric again, relaying the exchange with Karen and describing the SUV. Eric didn't hesitate. "That's a surveillance vehicle. Could be private intelligence, could be federal. Either way, if she's telling you to put the devices back, it's because she's scared of retaliation. They're probably monitoring the street already." Marcus rubbed his temples. "So what do I do? Call the FBI?" Eric hesitated. "If it's not their operation, they might help. But if it is, you'll just be tipping them off that you're aware. You'd have to go about it carefully." As Marcus was about to respond, his phone buzzed. It was an unknown number. He let it go to voicemail, but seconds later, a notification appeared. He played the message on speaker. A distorted voice spoke just 2 words: "Stop digging." Marcus and Eric sat in silence for a moment over the phone line. "They know you found them," Eric finally said. "Oh." That evening, Marcus noticed something else. His mail had been tampered with. He didn't have proof, no torn envelopes, no obvious damage, but the neat stack inside his mailbox looked slightly off, and one of the letters had a faint crease that hadn't been there before. It clicked in his mind. They weren't just monitoring his internet. They were monitoring him. For the next 3 days, Marcus noticed more signs. His garbage bins were slightly out of place after collection. A car he didn't recognize was parked 2 blocks down for hours at a time. Even his Amazon packages arrived resealed, though no items were missing. And through it all, Karen avoided him completely. No passive-aggressive comments, no HOA gossip, no accidental meetings at the property line. Her curtains stayed closed. On the 4th night, Marcus heard a noise outside around 2 a.m. He grabbed a flashlight and went to the back deck. There, just beyond the edge of his yard, a figure in dark clothing was kneeling near the cable junction box. Marcus's heart pounded. He shouted, "Hey!" The figure bolted, disappearing into the shadows before Marcus could even reach the fence. The next morning, Karen was gone. Her car sat in the driveway, but the blinds were open and the inside looked empty. A for sale sign appeared on her lawn 2 days later, though Marcus had never seen a realtor visit. Oh! By now, Marcus knew 2 things. 1, whoever was behind this was willing to spook people into disappearing. 2, Karen had been right. This wasn't just about him. He decided to dig deeper, but cautiously. Through a combination of tracer routes, network packet captures, and some tools he and Eric had built years ago, Marcus traced the signal from the devices. It wasn't going to a local IP or even somewhere in the state. It was bouncing through multiple encrypted tunnels before terminating at a data center in Northern Virginia. Eric swore under his breath when Marcus told him, "That's federal territory. Either an agency's using it or someone's spoofing their infrastructure to make it look like they are. Either way, you're playing with fire now." Marcus thought about stopping, about putting them back like Karen had said, but the violation was too personal now. If they were watching him, he wanted to know why. Oh! The break came unexpectedly. One of the devices, still powered on for testing, attempted a handshake with a new IP. Marcus intercepted the attempt, and to his surprise, the data packet contained something unusual, a partially decrypted list of user IDs. He ran them through public databases. Several were meaningless, but one hit him like a punch to the gut: his late father's social security number. His father had died 10 years ago, a decorated Air Force intelligence officer. Suddenly, the pieces clicked into place. Marcus wasn't just a random target. He was the son of someone who had once been deeply embedded in classified operations. And someone out there thought Marcus might still have access to something his father left behind. The realization changed everything. This wasn't about Wi-Fi theft. It wasn't about Karen's nosiness. She had been a pawn, maybe even a reluctant one, in a much bigger hunt. Marcus stared at the blinking lights of the devices on his coffee table and made a decision. If they wanted what his father had hidden, they were going to have to come for it in person, because he had no intention of giving it up. Marcus spent the next 48 hours preparing for a confrontation he knew was inevitable. The discovery of his father's social security number in that intercepted packet had changed the game. He no longer felt like an innocent man caught in the crossfire. He was the target. The reason might have been buried in the past, but whoever was looking for it wasn't going away. His father, Colonel James Ellison, had been a quiet man in retirement, but a legend in certain intelligence circles. Marcus had grown up in a house where certain rooms were off limits, certain questions went unanswered, and certain phone calls sent his father into his study for hours. Marcus had always assumed it was just military secrecy. Now, he wondered if it was something more tangible, something that could survive long after his father was gone. The problem was Marcus had no idea what it was. He started in the attic. His father's belongings were still boxed up there, untouched since Marcus inherited the house. Military records, faded photographs, medals, and service patches filled most of the boxes. But in one battered footlocker, he found something unusual: a false bottom. Inside was a small, waterproof case. It was locked with a combination dial. Marcus didn't know the code, but he knew his father well enough to guess. He tried his father's service ID number. The case clicked open. Inside were 3 items: a thick envelope, a small hard drive, and a worn leather notebook. The envelope contained old letters, handwritten, some in foreign languages Marcus couldn't read. The notebook was filled with coordinates, coded entries, and strange diagrams that looked like communication schematics. But the hard drive, that was what sent a chill through Marcus. It wasn't a regular consumer drive. It was military grade, designed to withstand heat, water, and impact. On the side, in his father's blocky handwriting, were 3 words: "For Marcus only." Marcus knew he couldn't just plug it into his laptop. It might be booby-trapped, encrypted, or both. He called Eric again, explaining what he'd found. "Bring it to me," Eric said immediately, "and don't connect it to anything online. Air-gapped only." But Marcus didn't get the chance. That night at 11:43 p.m., his power went out. A second later, his phone buzzed with a single notification from an encrypted messaging app he didn't remember installing. "We're coming for it." Marcus grabbed the hard drive, the notebook, and the envelope, shoving them into a backpack. He'd been paranoid enough to keep a go-bag by the door ever since he found the devices, and now he slung it over his shoulder. Through the blinds, he saw them, 2 black SUVs this time, rolling silently down the street. The first stopped in front of Karen's house. The second stopped in front of his. He didn't wait for a knock. He slipped out the back door, cutting through his neighbor's yard and into the thin strip of woods that bordered the development. The SUV's engines idled behind him. A flashlight beam swept across the trees. Voices followed. "Split up, he's on foot." Marcus moved fast but careful, keeping low, using the darkness to his advantage. The voices grew fainter, then closer again. Whoever they were trained. He circled toward the edge of the woods, emerging into the parking lot of a closed grocery store. Eric's apartment was 4 miles away, but Marcus knew he'd never make it on foot without being spotted. That's when his phone buzzed again. This time it was Eric. "Don't come here," Eric said. "They've got someone watching my building. Go to the address I'm texting you now. It's safe." The address turned out to be a small, nondescript storage facility on the industrial edge of town. Marcus punched in the code Eric had sent, and a roll-up door rattled open to reveal Karen. She looked different. No pastel cardigan, no mug of coffee, just jeans, a black hoodie, and the same tight-lipped expression she'd worn the morning she told him to put the devices back. "Get inside," she said. Marcus hesitated. "You... inside, now." He stepped in, and she shut the door behind him. The unit was bare except for a folding table, 2 chairs, and a battered laptop. "I didn't disappear," Karen said. "I went underground, and you just brought the one thing they've been looking for straight to me." Marcus set the backpack on the table. "You knew my father?" She nodded once. "We worked together years ago. He had information that certain people wanted buried. When he died, they assumed it died with him, until you started working in cybersecurity. Then they got paranoid. Thought maybe he'd left you a copy." Marcus unzipped the bag, pulling out the hard drive. "And this is it?" Karen's eyes narrowed. "Depends. If that's the real drive, it's priceless. If it's a decoy, we're both dead." They worked for hours, air-gapping the laptop and connecting the drive. To Marcus's surprise, it wasn't encrypted, not in the usual way. The interface opened to a single folder labeled Echo. Inside were hundreds of files, scans of classified memos, intercepted communications, and photographs of people Marcus didn't recognize. But the deeper they went, the more alarming it became. The files documented a covert operation, one that targeted U.S. citizens under the guise of foreign intelligence gathering. Illegal surveillance, blackmail, asset manipulation, and it wasn't from decades ago. The most recent file was dated just 3 months earlier. Marcus realized, with a sinking feeling, that the very people watching him now were part of the same operation his father had been documenting. Karen looked at him. "If you release this, you'll expose them, but they'll come after you harder than you can imagine." Marcus thought of the SUVs, the voices in the woods, the devices hidden in his home. "They're already coming after me." By dawn, Marcus had made his choice. He wouldn't go to the authorities. They might be compromised. Instead, he and Karen split the data into multiple encrypted packages, uploading them to trusted journalists, activists, and international watchdog groups. They set timed releases for redundancy, ensuring that if anything happened to them, the files would go public anyway. At 6:14 a.m., Marcus hit send. 2 minutes later, the power to the storage facility cut out. The roll-up door groaned open. 3 figures stepped inside, tactical gear, faceless behind black balaclavas. One of them pointed at the laptop. "Step away." Marcus raised his hands, but Karen spoke first. "Too late. It's gone." The leader didn't move. "You've made a mistake you can't undo." Marcus stared at him. "So did you, when you came after my father's son." For a long moment, no one moved. Then, without a word, the 3 figures backed out of the unit and the door slammed shut. The files hit the public domain within hours. News outlets exploded with coverage. Government agencies scrambled to respond. And while Marcus knew he'd painted a target on his back for life, he also knew they couldn't put the genie back in the bottle. Karen vanished again, this time for good. Marcus never saw her house sell, never saw moving trucks. It was as if she'd never lived there at all. But sometimes late at night, he'd catch sight of a shadow at the edge of the street, watching. And every time, he'd glance at his router, the network name Ellison Secure Sure 5G glowing on the screen, and think, let them watch. I'm ready this time. In a world full of noise, we follow the quiet truth stories that reveal, awaken, and transform. If this story moved you, like, comment, and subscribe for more untold narratives that challenge perception and stir the soul. Hit the bell so you never miss when the compass points us to the next hidden truth. This is Hidden Compass Stories, where every story leads somewhere deeper,